Now, moving ahead, dear participants, we have the last panel discussion of today, brilliantly themed as best practices and managing hybrid cloud infrastructure for the future. It indeed is an honor for me to introduce all the dignitaries of the panel, starting off with our very first eminent panelist, Mr. Tarek Trek, Head of Infrastructure and Communication, a government entity, Qatar. Our second eminent panelist is Mr. Nick Vora, Regional CIO, Mastercard, Middle East and Africa. Our third eminent panelist is Dr. Shadha ALAmri, Head of Entrepreneurship and Innovation Department, University of Technology and Applied Sciences, Oman. Our fourth eminent panelist is Mr. Wassim Elghazzawi, Country Manager, Qatar, Veritas Technology. Our fifth eminent panelist is Mr. Fateh Abu Hijleh, Head of IT at Darwish Engineering, W.L.L. Our sixth eminent panelist is Mr. Saeed, Bilal Saeed, Digital Solution Advisor at Halliburton. And at last, our eminent panel moderator, Ms. Sheeba Hasnain, Senior IT and Digital Transformation Specialist, a government entity. All the best, dear participants, all the best, dear panelists, and over to you, Sheeba, to graciously moderate your panel.
Thank you so much, Bridget, for great introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you and welcome to this panel, Best Practices and Managing Hybrid Cloud Infrastructure for Future. It's a pleasure and delight to have esteemed leaders with us in their field to discuss the topic and leverage the idea to build the next generation of hybrid cloud infrastructure and its best practices. As we know, cloud has become the core element for enterprise strategy. It is one of the most disruptive change in the computing. So let's go deep dive into the topic and listen from a specialist. Let's have a better idea about the best practices for managing hybrid cloud infrastructure for the future. So I would like to invite Dr. Shadha, and my first question goes to her. Dr. Shadha, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hi. How innovation in ICT can improve economy? Go ahead, Dr. Shadha, and explain.
Yep. Okay. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm happy to join today. So regarding innovation in ICT, information communication technology, because currently, as you have seen, the market, the job market is looking for ICT skills, and even for future jobs. And if you refer back to the Economy Forum statistics, they have listed like a top 5 in ICT technologies which will be looking for in the future from now to 2025. And in the top 5, there is cloud computing, there is cybersecurity, there is IoT, big data, and as well all the, let's say, the web. So if you notice, cybersecurity and cloud, they are in the top 5 in the coming 5 years. So it is very important for us to be ready. And when we talk about future, means the academia. So as well, the graduates in ICT specialization should be ready to take over and let's say even have innovative ideas to tackle those issues regarding security and cloud. So this is the link maybe from my perspective.
Thanks, Dr. Shadha, for deep diving into the innovation in ICT and different fields you have mentioned, like cybersecurity, and in education area, the improvement in economy also. So let's move ahead to our second panelist, Mr. Tarek. Mr. Tarek, over to you. We want to know about your experience and thought about the cloud adoption strategy. Mr. Tarek, are you there?
Yes. Sorry, I was muted. Am I audible?
Go ahead, please.
Yes.
Yes.
So good evening all. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today. So actually, there is many questions or concerns need to be addressed before adopting the cloud journey. For example, what is the best fit model for my business requirement? What is feasible to migrate? Cybersecurity, compliance, resilience, and most important, what's next? So after we migrate to the cloud, is this our final destination, or we need to consider repatriation, or maybe we need to consider the multi-distinct or multi-vendor cloud, etc. So just in brief, what is cloud computing? It's like not owning your own infrastructure, using infrastructure hosted in some public cloud on demand. Whenever you need it, you are going to use it to serve your application, database, and you eventually utilize the computing resources. And it could be pay as you go and consumption based. Okay, so other questions need to be addressed and to be a concern. Is the model I'm selecting offering me optimization, operation scalability, and productivity and modernization I'm thinking for? Because we don't want to migrate the resources or workload from on-prem to cloud the same shape, let's say, the same form. So we need to leverage the technology of the cloud, right?
Yes.
So cloud could be private, could be community, could be public, or it could be a hybrid or multi-cloud provider. The responsibility as well is very important. And what model you are going to use? IaaS, PaaS, SaaS. In other words, do you want it semi-furnished, fully furnished, unfurnished? So, but regardless, and that's the most important thing. Regardless of what model you are going to use, the data responsibility will be always the entity. Data, endpoints, and account and access management, those 4 pillars or four areas will always be the entity responsibility. So having our workload over the cloud, it's not like we are not, how to say, sharing the risk or offloading the risk. Okay, so other question we need to address is what are the candidate workloads we can migrate? Shall we consider modernization to leverage the cloud technology? Assist the migration effort and consumption? Okay, and future planning. So what's next? So we should not only focus on cybersecurity, compliance, reliability, elasticity. We need to consider what's next. There is a rollback plan. We are going to you are going to adopt multi-site or multi-cloud provider. Multi-cloud provider could be considered for multiple factors. Not to having, there is a saying, not to having all your eggs in one basket. Or maybe there are some services can be provided from one cloud provider or hyperscaler, and the other feature you need to go with a different provider. Okay, and knowing that the technology is keep evolving, as we know now, everything it was trendy from 5 years, now it's legacy technology. Okay, so planning for your cloud journey, there are requirements, there are tools you need to use. So first, you need to define your strategy to know what's your direction, based on maybe business requirement, based on assessment, current assessment for your data center, for your IT ecosystem. You need to define your cloud virtual data center architecture. Okay, most important, because cloud, everyone was saying cloud, it's cost saving. It's cost saving based on continuous monitoring and optimization of your workload over there. So as there is a saying, some workloads will be much more expensive having it over the cloud and less expensive having it on-prem. But still, if it is you did the TCO that you are going to migrate, it's more feasible to migrate over the cloud. Still, you need to keep monitoring the consumption and the utilization. You can always implement measures to reduce the cost. Okay. So in regards of other concerns or other area or other pillar, we need to look at the security and compliance requirements. We need to define our security strategy. We need to cloud security. It has to address or to adopt the defense in-depth concept, incident response, forensic capability, data classification and protection. Know what is your data. So if there is any compliance or legal issue, okay, of course, applies the required security controls, resilience and business continuity. So business continuity is not only related to infrastructure availability, it's related to cybersecurity resilience as well. Incident can cost you downtime, right? Cloud provider availability history. So if we are going to select among like one or two or three cloud providers, we need to check the background of their availability history. The SLA, if the SLA matches your business requirement. If there is cybersecurity breach history of the cloud provider. Lastly, what is the advantage of cloud computing? I believe most of us leverage the advantage of cloud computing especially during COVID-19. And it's faster time to market. You can serve millions of public users easily. You can scale out on demand. You can respond to emergency requirements. Less operational overhead in general. Shorten or to eliminate the procurement lifecycle. Eliminate, for example, the waiting of delivery time of the hardware, which usually takes 6 to 8 weeks. But currently, during these days, due to the shortage of semiconductors, most of the IT equipment and even car production is delayed because of this. So that's about it from my end. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Tarek. Absolutely interesting and brilliant points you have taken out. Moving ahead to receive more meaningful insight from Nick's experience. Mr. Nick, how can government ensure data protections with the rapid adoption of cloud? Over to you, Mr. Nick.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheeba. So I think it's a very interesting point that you've got this kind of confluence of multiple factors that are going on where governments are rightfully looking at where and how data is being stored, how it's being used by both public and private entities of their citizens and residents, and saying with this migration or leveraging of cloud, as we've spoken about this thing, especially public cloud providers, where is the data, right? Before in the legacy world, it was kind of relatively straightforward. You could go to a data center, into a room and see all the physical storage devices. But now in the era of public cloud, it's a click of a button in order to create zones in other parts of the world. So I think governments in particular have a tremendous responsibility to be able to balance the innovation and the speed to market, as Tarek was referring to earlier, that comes with adoption of cloud and specifically public cloud with this data protection. Measures that they really should be looking at. The analogy or the example I always like to use, if you think about it, is almost like helping the private enterprises and or public enterprise create community or public cloud zones within their country or within countries that they have data protection agreements with or data access agreements with, so that when these companies can then, it makes it easier for them to create cloud environments for companies that want to localize the data within those regions. Governments should absolutely be looking at how these trends are going in order to be able to work in partnership with a lot of these companies and being able to create access zones and audit rights for them. I don't think the biggest danger actually is when governments outright ban the use of or restrict tremendously the use of these public cloud providers or any other cloud providers, because it actually imposes a much higher cost on both speed and actual physical infrastructure for a lot of the companies that are trying to innovate especially in the areas now with IoT and fintechs and all, really accelerating their market strategies, waiting weeks, months in order to get the physical infrastructure. It's just no longer something that people in the country are willing to accept. So.
Okay, thanks. Next, you have excellently explained the points and the relevance of government organizations and the adoption policies. Moving ahead, Mr. Fateh, would you like to explain us what are the motives to have hybrid cloud? Over to you, Mr. Fateh.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me in this event, and thank you for this great question. Actually, there are so many reasons to move to the cloud. To mention some, mobility is one of the reasons. If you have your services in-house, then to have it available wherever you go, there are some measures that you need to take care of. While it is by nature there when you have this service from the cloud. Another reason might be the agility and scalability of the services. If you need to scale up or scale down the services while you have it in-house, then there are some measures that you need to take care of. And I think my colleague Tarek mentioned about the delivery time and other measures. While with a few clicks, you can have this done if you are in the cloud. One major thing that we always have to take it into consideration is the cost. If you have some services in-house, now to have a certain scale of this service, you might need to buy more than what you need now in order to accommodate 6 months later. But with the cloud, you can maintain this very well. You can scale up and scale down as per your need, maintaining your cost. Last thing I would like to mention is the security. In order to secure your environment, you need to spend a good amount of resources and money. While for the cloud services, this security measures are there by nature. So you don't need to take care or to have a hassle of implementing such security measures. This is just to mention a few.
Okay, thanks Fateh. It was great and it was great takeaway for our listeners. And let's have more insight from Syed Bilal. Bilal, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Bilal, would you be able to explain, is it really necessary to move all industries such as small, medium, and large industries to cloud computing? Please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for giving me a chance to talk about on this very interesting topic. It's a very important thing we need to understand that how much important is the hybrid cloud in the Middle East, especially from a Qatar perspective. Overall, the challenges and what are the required information is the same, I believe, as for other countries in the Gulf. But especially if we talk from the perspective of from the best practices side, there are multiple things which we need to consider. The first is how much is advantages from cost perspective, as my other colleagues mentioned in this discussion, and how flexible it is from the user perspective. Security is one of the topic which is very much important for the clients and the users who are working in the Gulf companies. In an oil industry, yes, it is very much important. And most of the oil companies, they are very much reluctant to place the data on, especially the technical data on a cloud. So how would we can how can we actually convince them to move on the hybrid cloud? Obviously, that's only the one solution, because private cloud is not easy, first of all, and it is not easy to scale it. The scalability is always a challenge because you need to improve a lot of infrastructure from that side. So in a hybrid cloud, yes, there is a chance to easily scale it because you are connecting it to use it public cloud for the heavy jobs. But obviously, everybody would like to have a confirmation that the data will be fully secure. Is it reliable? And having a low expenditure, because cloud, everybody think that it's a cheaper solution. It's not. To be very honest, initially when you're moving on a cloud environment, it's not very easy to move on the cloud. There is a little bit cost. People have to take it. The companies have to take it. But obviously, in a longer run, when you are moving on fully on a cloud, it will be lower cost from a CapEx perspective. But you have to see overall lower OpEx cost, is it coming or not? That's what we need to have it. There are multiple disadvantages as well, which we need to see. What are this is it responsibility? Who's going to take the responsibility? Is that the cloud provider or a data center guys, which is in the country with the local partners, or the company IT people? That's what is always a debatable. In a different organizations, it is happening, and there's always a little bit of gray area which needs to be addressed. Furthermore, in a hybrid cloud, we also need to see this, that is it really a hybrid cloud need for every customer, for every organization, for every small people companies as well, or not? That's what we need to address it. And I think cloud is a new norm, and it will be applied in all the small or big companies. But how much is it cost effective right now for our small organizations or not? So non-technical data, for example, Microsoft, Outlook and all these things can be easily moved on the cloud. But for the heavy application, which includes the modeling type or having some simulation jobs, which is taking long hours to run, that is really cost taking environment, and that needs to be fully checked and work with the proper working on the cost side. So that's what is my take on the hybrid cloud environment in different scenarios. We have to do a lot of working before talking about moving on to the hybrid cloud. That's very much from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Bilal. It was definitely great perspective, and it will be very supportive for concerned body for taking decisions when there are very complex programs there and systems are there. So moving ahead to Mr. Wassim.
Sheeba,
Yes.
just one comment over here, adding to what the gents and the lady so far spoke about. So the cloud provider usually will secure the cloud, but we need to secure what's in the cloud, which our data and accounts and etc.
Great. Thank you so much. Mr. Wassim, over to you. How Veritas helping companies to accelerate hybrid cloud adoption? Go ahead, Mr.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. For many years, we have understood customer want choice. They want choice when it comes to their infrastructure partner. They want choice when it comes to technology that they choose. And in this case, with the cloud provider, we will going to help our customer make the public cloud the choice they wish to. Understanding that their data is going to be secured, safe, and governed well. For us as Veritas, we are only the cloud company that is able to approach customer in a way where we can enable them to have a consistency across the private cloud and into the public cloud. And that consistency is a key part of our strategy of meeting our customer where they are in their digital transformation and not forcing them to come to the cloud on our terms. I think some of the immediate value of our customer are going to get working with any cloud provider, and Veritas are really in the transformation side. Customers wants to be able to pick and move any application where they where they built these application years ago in a client server format or virtual application. Veritas and the cloud, working with the cloud provider to make sure these applications can not only work in the public cloud, but also can work across the hybrid environment. The leadership that Veritas has with customers and confident that the customer has in Veritas brand and Veritas products, we will be able to take that trust and that leadership from product standpoint and work with our cloud provider and our customer to help them to move over to the hybrid cloud. We can work with IT pros and IT generalists that are responsible for storage and data archival and backup infrastructure, so that those storage experts are front and center in leading the way in the digital transformation for their respective companies. We believe that these guys, the storage in that sense, truly is a strategic technology. And this partnership is one where we get together and make sure we work with our customer to enable them on the hybrid cloud. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wassim. And that's where we are ending our round one. And let's move ahead for our sum up session of round two. I would like to ask Mr. Tarek. Mr. Tarek, what must be the consideration for cloud security, compliance, and regulation? Please go ahead, Mr. Tarek. Mr. Tarek, are you there?
Yeah, okay. Just sorry, I was muted. So security, of course, we need, after having our security strategy, we need to implement the concept, as we mentioned, the security in depth and the relevant security control mapping to the risk. Of course, risk assessment should be there. Yani. It's always about people, process, and technology, right? So we need to do the governance part, and then we need to map the required security control to this risk assessment, let's say, practice or process. Okay, and we need to make sure that we are compliant for the local laws and regulation, like Qatar cybercrime prevention law, like data privacy law, policies, procedure guidelines set by MOTC, etc. And as we mentioned earlier, know your data, location of your data. If there is any application or maybe a litigation impact on the organization where we are hosting the data. So that's regarding the compliance and the security. And as you mentioned, it's all the data is always the responsibility of the entity. So no matter what will happen, we are the owner of the data, so it's our responsibility to practice our due diligence to protect the information.
Yes, Mr. Tarek, thank you so much for great takeaways for our listeners. Mr. Nick, over to you. How has Mastercard adopted cloud technology to increase innovation in financial services, especially?
Yeah, thanks again so much for the question. At Mastercard, we've been on a multi-year journey to embed cloud through our ecosystem where it makes sense, right? Like a lot of the conversation that's been happening, it's not about just a wholesale conversion of legacy technologies into cloud. We've been being very particular about what we are moving into the cloud, and we've been working very closely with all of the major providers in making sure that it has the services available, including cryptography, encryption, and others, to make sure that payment information can be kept as secure. When it comes to innovation in particular, where we've adopted cloud the most is in partnerships with all of our fintechs and some of the acquisitions that we've done. It's an area that has seen tremendous growth, whether it's because of new devices that are becoming enabled for payments, right? So you can now make payments and place orders through things like Google Home and Amazon Alexa and others, watches that can be used as tap devices, rings, etc., all of these things. And lots of fintechs that are looking at how they can do payments faster and more seamlessly and make them just much more convenient for for the consumers. So as Mastercard, we've got a open sandbox type environment that is really a cloud-enabled place where fintechs can come in, they can set up their compute platforms and be able to really use our APIs, our payment technologies, to be able to simulate payments and to be able to integrate with all of the different services and products that we provide. What that allows is, of course, is an acceleration because it gives them a method to test and to not have to reinvent things that we've done for them, whether it's security elements around fraud management of different payment tools, whether it's about gateways to different providers, lots of different services that are available in this, not only offered by us, but then of course also offered by all of the other partners that are certified by and work very closely with us, so that the fintechs can leverage that in the best way.
Extremely valuable experience of use case from Mastercard. Thank you so much, Mr. Nick. And moving ahead to Mr. Fateh. Mr. Fateh, what is your opinion about the barriers of going fully to cloud?
Thanks for the question. I believe my colleagues here touched base also on the same. One of the major thing is the policies and regulations. There are some regulations that might stop you from going to the cloud, but so it's maturing nowadays, and I think in the near future such barriers will be vanished. Another thing might be the maturity of the service itself in the cloud. There are some services still not mature enough in the cloud, hence you will wait for these services to mature enough. Another barrier that I think mainly in our region here we might face it is the internet connectivity, because if you are getting your services from the cloud without internet, you are out of service. So you really need to take this into consideration whenever you have this decision. One last point might be the investment. If you recently invested in your in-house environment, then it might not be visible for you to go to the cloud nowadays. So, but by time, you might see it more visible to move your services to the cloud. I believe these are major reasons.
Thanks, Fateh. Absolutely, barriers. If we know the barriers, then only we can have a smooth cloud adoption journey. Absolutely great point. Mr. Bilal, would you be able to answer why hybrid cloud is important in Middle East?
Well, obviously, it's important since we have most of the organizations in Middle East who are already talking more of they're reluctant to move on fully on a public cloud. So hybrid is actually a solution for them to move on a cloud environment, having a benefits of all the cloud technology, and the data will be still reside in their own country. So in the mostly the Gulf countries, that's one of the key point where hybrid cloud is the right solution for the organizations. They can get the full benefit of the public cloud while for running the heavier jobs, and especially from machine learning and the data science perspective. And the data will be still reside in their own country. It will not move out. So that's I think the key important point where the most of the Gulf countries is looking for. But again, there is still reluctance even on moving on to the hybrid cloud. Even if we are talking with them, the IT people, the management of the organizations, they are thinking that, okay, even if it's still moving on to the public cloud for just for running up jobs, but still it's going out. So how would you compliance it? So obviously the cloud providers or the different vendors who are providing it, they need to have a different level of certifications. Like for example, SOC 2, that's one of the compliance you have to do it. Okay, otherwise it will not be very much or easily acceptable, at least in the oil and gas industry. I can say when I am talking to the different organizations, different customers, they are first question they are asking it, okay, is your cloud provider, is your applications on a cloud is SOC 2 compliance or not? So that's one of the most important perspective where we have to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Syed Bilal. Actually, I understand like for all verticals, compliance are mandatory and people must understand to proceed for smooth adoption. Moving ahead to Dr. Shadha. Dr. Shadha, initially you have emphasized on higher education. So would you be answer how higher education can contribute in sustaining economy?
Yes, thank you. In fact, like now I was listening to everyone, we are going like, everyone has a company and they want to provide a service, okay? But the critical thing is to convince those customers to use your services. And if you notice, it is worldwide, like some governments, they have resistance to go to the cloud. And because one of the main reason is like securing their data. They are like, can we manage our data? Is anyone else gonna go through our data and so on? Okay, so this is like like any other market. It is there. Challenges and opportunities are there. Okay, over here in education, because I'm from the University of Technology and Applied Science, the education over here is to allow our students to know those challenges, and from now we should prepare them to try to, let's say, contribute on those solutions. Instead of just they are working like staff or employee in the companies, they can think in an innovative way how I can solve this problem. Since there is a lot of problems, so there is a lot of opportunities as well. So from higher education perspective as well, here is to allow them to know those, let's say, opportunities, and as well to allow them to solve them, okay? So in higher education, as I mentioned previously, ICT now, it is skill for everyone. It's not just for IT people. Everyone in the world, they have to have at least a minimum skills in information and communication technology. So from an overall thing, like I'm saying here, is if the new generation, they understand the technology, because they will be the next customers as well. If they understand the technology, and they know how it's going, and they understand the security aspects, because we cannot say cloud is not secure. There is security with some levels, with some measurements. So they should understand those levels of measurements. At the end, we will be like in one ecosystem. Yani. So we are customers or we are like a company provider. To, let's say, at the end of story, we want to have some rising economy. So all parties should collaborate and understand the technology to use it, and as well to develop it. So I think this from my side.
Truly said, Dr. Shadha, the new generations are our future customers, so their understanding about the new technology and agility is must for us. And moving ahead to Mr. Wassim. Mr. Wassim, question goes to you. What is Veritas doing to protect customers' data against ransomware? Over to you, Mr. Wassim.
Yeah, thank you. What we have seen in the last few years, that there is a huge rise of ransomware attack. June of this year, there were 30 attacks every second. And we as a Veritas, we are helping our customer against ransomware by 3 easy steps, which is protect, detect, and recovery. If we look at protection, there is a lot of new technology that we have brought to the market in this area by identifying and access management protection. We make sure data is encrypted and immutable, whether on-premise, cloud, or hybrid cloud. Detection, we introduced some new fabulous features with our solution that has a built anomaly detection capability that gives 100% visibility in your data protection environment. And when you come to the recovery, imagine you have been attacked for ransomware and you have paid for this ransomware. So you need something to have a quick, very, very quick recover to bring your data back in a very short period of time. So you need something to be automated. You need something to be orchestrated. So we are helping, we have this feature capability that we help our customer to automate and orchestrate their recovery and data protection feature. And all our solution has an intrusion detection system, IDS, and also we have the intrusion protection system, which is IPS.
Thank you, Wassim. Thank you for great takeaways. Now it's time for question answer session. Audience, do you have any question for our esteemed panelist?
Well, Sheeba, I do not see any questions as of now. However, if there are any at the back end, I will definitely shoot out an email to you and to our eminent panelists, and it will be answered by you, I request. Yeah.
I have a question, can I?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, so from the last speaker, Mr. Wassim, thank you for your input. You say, you talk about the IDS and the IBS, yes? Intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention systems.
Correct.
So based on your experience, okay, is the IDS can, for example, secure the data itself? What I mean in the packets, in the packet itself. Can the data be secured if it's not encrypted or something like this?
Our solution have encryption, and plus of that having the IDS. IDS alone doesn't protect you against ransomware. So you need something like IPS. Let's say IPS is the protection part, which is it comes to protect your data. Detection is only monitoring what's happening in your, let's say, for example, data. If any behavior, wrong behavior happen in this file on this data, it will be you as alert. But alone, it will protect you against ransomware. No.
Thanks, Dr. Shadha, for great question. And now it's time to sum up. Is there any other question, or we will sum up? So now it's time to sum up the whole discussion about the panel, best practices and managing hybrid cloud infrastructure for the future. We had great insightful discussion with knowledgeable and great leaders. You all have shared a highly valuable advice, and your advice will be the best practices in certain organizations. So I am highly delighted and thankful to all. It was fantastic and very informative session. Thanks for all being with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheeba. Thanks, Tarek. Thanks, Nick, Fateh, Saeed, Shadha, and Wassim for joining us today and sharing your unmatched and precious knowledge with us. We truly appreciate each one of you for your continuous support towards all our summits. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.